Other local news this morning, Captain Willibald Bill Charles Bianchi is finally home. He was laid to rest Saturday in the Soldiers' Rest section of the Ulm Cemetery after being returned from Hawaii, where he had been interred alongside fellow prisoners of war. Hundreds gathered in Ulm to honor the local hero who endured some of the darkest chapters of the Pacific theater in World War II, including the Bataan Death March. Bianchi later received the Medal of Honor for his actions during the war. Saturday's service included full military honors, a 21-gun salute, cannon fire from the New Ulm Battery, and a low flyover by 3 military helicopters. Family members, veterans, community members, and the 1st Battalion 125th Field Artillery Regiment and the Patriot Guard Riders were all in attendance.